Hey everyone, this is Dr. Steve Orma, and today I'm going to complete the series that I've been doing over the last several weeks on how to overcome insomnia and what exactly is the treatment process in good detail, step by step each week as you go through that process. So, today I'm going to cover weeks 8 through 10 and beyond, but if you haven't watched the previous videos, I would highly recommend that. It gives you the full treatment process and all the details week by week of what you would go through in order to eliminate your insomnia, for good, for life. And I cover, everything in probably greater detail than you'll find anywhere online. And so today, as I said, I'm going to cover weeks 8 through 10 and beyond. And I'll just give you a quick recap. What we covered so far. Weeks 1, we captured your baseline data using a sleep log, as well as starting to shift your frame of mind, your negative sleep thoughts, worries, anxiety around the sleep, and starting to shift that to put you into the right frame of mind to be able to go through this process. What we did in week 2 is we took the baseline numbers and we created a sleep schedule that fits your sleep perfectly like a glove, as well as started to taper you off medication for sleep and or supplements for sleep if you are taking it. Week 3, we added the 30-30 rule, which is a really powerful, effective technique for what you do if you're in the bed and you're having difficulty staying asleep. How do you respond to that effectively so you don't keep feeding the insomnia and strengthening it, but actually start to break it? And also we talked about a relaxation exercise that you start to practice during the day in week 3 for the next couple of weeks. We also continued doing what you learned in weeks 1 and 2 as well. Then in week 4, we didn't add anything new. There was a break between weeks 3 and 5, but you just continue doing everything that you learned up to that point. The one thing we did do is readjusted your sleep schedule. We do that every single week from this point on based on the previous week's numbers. Then we went over week 5. Week 5 was taking the relaxation exercise that you learned in week 3 that you've been using during the day, and then we teach you how to use it at night with your sleep to help you either fall asleep or fall back asleep in the night and do that effectively. We also adjusted your sleep schedule as well. Then we went over week 6 and 7. That was last week's video where I went over in week 6. Just like week 4, we don't add anything new. We just adjust your sleep schedule. And then in week 7, I went over sleep hygiene, what it is, what it isn't, why we added at that point, and how I do all these things. One thing I've covered through this whole series is how my treatment process and what I've put together in my program over, 8 years of doing this, how that differs than sort of a traditional or a generic CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is what this treatment process is built on. How what I've learned over doing this for many years and how then I've adapted and changed and enhanced that process, made it better, made it stronger, filled in some holes that are missing to make it, easier and more effective for my clients to be able to get past insomnia and get their sleep back. That's another thing I've highlighted in this series. So what I'm going to cover today is weeks 8 through 10 and beyond, what I cover in my program. Now, normally with CBTI, kind of generic or traditional CBTI, it's generally it varies, but it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 7 weeks of treatment, and that's going to be based on probably the individual person you're working with, what they include, what they don't include in the process, because like people will include or not include certain things that I've talked about. Like I include everything I think is important. It also depends on the frequency that they have developed for meeting with you, how many breaks they have in between different weeks. And also it could also be based a little bit on your progression as well. But generally it's not going to be more than, it's going to range somewhere between 5 and 7 weeks, and then you're done and then you're on your own. Now, what I found is that most people don't get all the way there in that time frame. almost everybody that I work with, including myself when I went through it. And really, normally what happens is you learn all the tools or the essential tools in those 5 to 7 weeks, but you're not all the way there, and then you're on your own pretty much. Unless you schedule more sessions with the therapist or the provider or whoever you're doing it with, or you're on your own to like figure it out from that point. And to me, that's the most critical time, because it's sustaining it. You've been doing this and your sleep is progressing, hopefully, or it's not, depending on, how effective the treatment is that you're going through. But it's sustaining it at that point, and then adjusting your sleep schedule every single week, and knowing how to respond to the challenges, both the mental challenges that come up or the physical challenges. That is the critical thing that gets people past insomnia versus staying stuck. Just like when you're going after any goal, it's how strong you finish, not just how strong you start. It's how strong you start, how strong you sustain it, in the middle, and then how strong you finish that gets you all the way there. And so I've added, really my weeks 8 through 10 and beyond are things that aren't normally included. There's one little piece that is included sometimes, and I'll talk about that. But otherwise, everything is just unique to my program, because I found that these things were really important for people to be able to get all the way there, and then to be able to maintain and sustain their healthy sleep for the rest of their life. So what do I cover? So I'm just going to reference notes from my program here, because I don't remember this off the top. So I talk about finishing strong, right? I just mentioned that. So meaning that, once you get to week 8 and you've learned all these skills that I've talked about, you've been applying them to your sleep, you've been adjusting your sleep schedule, your sleep is progressing, it's improving, the insomnia is shrinking away. This is the point where you do not want to let up and drop the skills and drop the things that you've learned. You want to sustain them until you're all the way there, until the insomnia is fully broken and your pattern of sleep is getting consistent and strong, and you're sleeping better, you're sleeping longer, your sleep efficiency is up where we want it to be consistently. And until we get you there, we don't want you to stop, and we want you to finish the process strongly. So I talk about why that's important. I talk about how to do that. And a lot of it is mindset, but it's also just being aware of what to expect during that period, so you're not surprised, so you don't get frustrated, so you're not making assumptions that aren't true. Those are the things that mess people up, those mental things in particular. And so I go over, ways for you to think about it and manage that. I also go over benchmarks for when insomnia is gone. Like, how do you know when you could say my insomnia is gone versus I still have it? And I go over all the specific benchmarks for, how do you assess? And I help people do this, obviously, because they're getting support from me all the way through. So I can let them know, or I can, obviously give them guidance and look at their sleep log and all that. But I want you to know the whole thing. Like, my whole goal with my program is to not only get you past insomnia, reestablish your sleep, healthy sleep pattern, help you come off medications or supplements safely and effectively, but I want you to be able to sustain this for life, and I want you to be able to manage your own sleep for the rest of your life. So when people finish my program, they know more about sleep and insomnia and how to establish and maintain healthy sleep than 99.9% of medical doctors. I don't care if they're from Harvard or Stanford or Oxford or whatever. They don't know this stuff. They're not trained in sleep at all. They barely get any training. And so I want you're going to know way, way more than they do. And you're going to know more than 99% of therapists, psychologists, counselors out there, because they're also not trained in this. And you're going to know way more than what you find when you Google this on the internet, because it's usually the wrong information. So you're going to be, you're going to know way more. I mean, you could teach this stuff when you're done. And that's incredibly powerful, empowering, because if you think about sleep and how fundamental it is, like, we sleep a third of our lives. It's like 27 years on average. We're sleeping. It's 8 hours a day. That's a third of your life. You're sleeping. It's important. Evolutionarily, we wouldn't sleep that much if it wasn't important and critical to our health, our well-being, everything, our functioning. And when you understand that really well, and you know how to modulate and manage your sleep, and you know what to do to maintain really good sleep, and you know what not to do, and then if you have a poor night of sleep in the future, a stressor, you travel, whatever, you know how to respond to that effectively to prevent yourself from relapsing. Okay, so one thing that we cover is relapse prevention. Okay, that's going to be the very last step. But basically, like, we want you to know how to take control of your sleep. So I teach everyone as they go through the program. Not only am I guiding them along the way, but they're also learning how to do this for themselves. Everything that we've talked about, including how to read your own sleep log and the sleep numbers, how to figure that stuff out, how to apply that to your sleep, and how to adjust your sleep schedule. And so that is a key thing that we cover in weeks 8 through 10 of the program. And I think that's everything that's covered in weeks 8 through 10. Okay. So then I add one more module in my program called Beyond Week 10. And what I cover in there is, let me just bring that up here. Basically how to maintain healthy sleep for life. Okay. And this is where I cover a few things. First of all, I go over what I call the 10 commandments of healthy sleep. Basically, all the principles that you've learned in the program, I summarize in like a PDF download. So you can remember and retain these things and have them as a quick reference for life. That if, in order basically to maintain healthy sleep for life and to prevent insomnia from coming back, you just follow these things. And these are things that you've already learned, you've been practicing through the whole program, and you want to just make these things a habit and a normal part of your life, like brushing your teeth or exercise or whatever, because that will help you sustain and maintain really good quality sleep once you're past the insomnia. So I go over that. Then I go over how to prevent relapse. So this is something that is normally, not always, but it should be included in like a regular CBTI, relapse prevention. Relapse prevention is teaching you how to prevent relapsing, how to prevent the insomnia from coming back, because a lot of times people will get insomnia, they'll get past it somehow, but then it comes back 6 months later, a year later. And we don't want that, right? We want you to be able to sustain that. So you learn how to maintain sleep and prevent relapse, both using mental techniques, but also preparing yourself in advance for when you have a poor night of sleep. It's normal that even once you're a normal, healthy sleeper, you're going to have some difficult nights of sleep. That's just being a human being. Because life happens, stress comes up, you travel, you get jet lag, you have an exciting event coming up the next day, so you can't sleep that night. It's totally normal. We just don't want those things to turn into insomnia. And so you learn how to respond to those stressors or interferences with your sleep effectively, mentally, and in your behaviors, so you don't recreate the insomnia. And that's really powerful, because that's how you're going to sustain this the rest of your life. And as I said, I had insomnia 8 years ago. And because I know this stuff now consciously really well, I haven't had a relapse. I mean, I've been able to, even though I've had stressors and I've done lots of travel and all these different things, the insomnia has not come back. And that's really powerful, right? That gives you confidence over your sleep and that you can maintain this. And that means that your health is going to be optimized, because if you're getting good sleep over time, most nights, you're going to feel better, you're going to function better, you're going to feel better emotionally. There's so many benefits. I actually have a whole video on the benefits of good sleep, which maybe you're aware of. But this is why we go over this at the end, because we don't want to get you all the way there to slip back. We want you to be able to sustain it. And we also want you to sustain that on your own, so you have agency and control over your sleep when you leave. That's what I want when people leave my program. Okay? Then we also talk about introducing flexibility with your sleep, right? So you could see, if you've watched this whole series, there's a lot of structure to this process, right? To overcoming insomnia. There's applying these skills, and you're doing this sleep schedule based on numbers and data, and there's a lot of structure to it, and that's critical to breaking the insomnia and establishing a healthy sleep pattern. Just like there's structure to a cast when you break your arm, there's structure to exercise, there's structure to diets, whatever. But once you regain like a normal healthy sleep pattern and the insomnia pattern is broken from your system, what happens is your sleep pattern starts to become more automatic, and you don't have to really you don't have to put it as much effort to maintain it. You just have to do a few key things. Just like, to maintain healthy teeth, if you have healthy teeth, you just brush your teeth. It takes a couple minutes a day. That you don't have to do that much, okay? And so with your sleep, once you get it on a normal pattern, you just do a few things, because now you're conscious, and you just apply those healthy behaviors and habits to your sleep and the way you go about it, and then how you respond to challenges with sleep. Then you're good. Okay? So it's really about learning how to do that rather than doing everything perfectly. And so you learn how to loosen up. I call it having flexibility with your sleep, because if you were, a decent sleeper at some point, you probably broke some rules, like you watch TV in bed, or maybe you went out one night and stayed out late and drank and had fun with friends, and or you traveled, and you didn't have to be so rigid around the sleep. Like, the one thing that actually feeds into insomnia is people trying too hard to overcome it, and they create this rigidity and this really tight rules around their sleep, and they have to do everything perfectly. And if they don't do it perfectly, then they get anxious, and then of course their sleep doesn't go well. And you don't want sleep shouldn't be that way. It should actually be fun. You should enjoy sleep. It's a pleasurable thing to do when you're not dealing with insomnia. When you're in insomnia, it's not pleasant at all. It's horrible. But we want to get you back to get you to a place where you're enjoying your sleep, and it's something you look forward to, and we don't want tension or rigidity around it. So you learn how can you be flexible with the sleep while you're still following generally good habits for sleep, and you can sustain the sleep even though you're loosening things up. So that's the last thing that we introduce you to. So you can move forward and be able to enjoy your life and go to events that you want to go to, and not plan your life around sleep. That's what happens with insomnia, is people start to restrict their life, and they start not maybe doing social things or traveling because they're so afraid it's going to make their sleep worse, which many times it will, but it also constricts their life and their quality of life. And you don't want to design your whole life around your sleep. You want your sleep to complement and support with your life, and be able to live your life and enjoy it and have fun and pursue your dreams and all that. So that's kind of the last thing that we go over. Okay? So that's everything that I do in my program and in my process. And I've highlighted, the different things that I do from a kind of a generic, regular process. I call it generic. I keep calling it generic because that's how it's applied sometimes, unfortunately, is like this sort of uniform treatment that's done the same with everybody. And the core skills and the process, those are the same, the principles, but the way they're applied should be very unique to each person based on their sleep pattern and all the different things around their sleep. And that's really what makes it effective and powerful. And then the last thing I'll talk about here is support. I've talked about this in one of the previous videos, but I provide a lot of support in my program because that's one key thing that I see is missing from a CBTI is the support in between sessions, when questions come up, when challenges arise, with whatever it is in this process. You can see this process is pretty involved. There's a lot of components to it. And when you have someone guiding you step by step, telling you what to do, what to not do, and answering questions all along the way, not just once a week or once every 2 weeks, but every day if you need it, that makes a massive difference in how the process goes and your success and getting to where you want to get to with your sleep. So I provide that all the way through, and in fact, beyond even the 10 weeks, as long as people need it. I have no time limit on the support, and there's no time limit on the program itself in terms of the training part of it. And that is not the way that CBTI is normally done. It's, as I said, 5 to 7 weeks and you're done. And then you're pretty much on your own at that point. So, I'm highlighting this because this is why sometimes if you've tried CBTI and you've had a difficulty, or you're doing it now, like a lot of people that come into my program, or a good number of them, have tried CBTI, or they're even currently doing it, and they're kind of making progress, but they're not. And whenever I look closely at it, it's because there's elements missing, or it isn't being applied correctly, or they're not getting enough support, or one of these things is not in place, and therefore they're very motivated and they want to overcome it, but they're not getting what they need. And really, to overcome insomnia, you need two things. You need the professional guidance and the support, and to be able to get questions answered or problem solved when you have it, when you need it. And then the other part is your part of it, which is learning all that and applying it and sticking with the process. And then, I work with my clients as a team. I bring the expertise and the support and the moral support and the guidance, and they bring the commitment to go through the process, and we work together. And when those two things come together, then the person's going to succeed, because the process is powerful, and like they're working with someone who knows what they're doing, and they're committed, meaning they're following the steps and following the process and doing the work. And when those two things come together, it's success. And that's true in any area of life, whether it's you're working with a personal trainer or a dietitian, or you're trying to achieve any goal. It's those two things that create the success. If you're missing one or the other, it ain't going to work, right? And so that's kind of how I've designed my program to work with people to make sure they succeed. And then I'm really, I'm selective about who I invite into my program, because I want to make sure, number one, it's a good fit and I can help them, but also I want to make sure they're a good fit for the program in terms of everything else. And when those two things come together, then people do really well. Okay, so I hope this series has been helpful for you. Because I get questions about, like, what are the details, and it's really hard to find this. I mean, online, like in terms of what are the actual steps that you go through in this process to overcome insomnia. And I hope you got a lot out of this series. I've given a lot of detail, and if you like the series and you enjoyed it and you got a lot of value from it, let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions, please let me know, because I can do other videos to address those questions. And if you're on YouTube and you like the video, then just press like, or you can subscribe to the channel. And then I do offer, if you want to learn more about the process that I've talked about, in this series, and, sort of the key steps that I kind of highlight that get you past the insomnia, and also talk about even some of my clients that I work with on these different things, then I do offer a free training that you can access on my website. So if you go to my website, which is drorma.com, so it's www.drorma.com, and there's a link at the top, free training. You click on that and you can register for and watch the training, and it'll give you even more of an overview, of kind of this process. So that's another resource if you want to check that out. Okay. So I hope you found this series helpful. Next week we'll continue with something new. But otherwise, have a good week.